Hi everyone, welcome back to The Modern Dentist, where we talk about all things that are interesting to the next generation of modern dentists. And today we have with us Dan Fine from Hive. He's the Group Director of Hive, which is a fascinating kind of multifaceted consultancy business, which I'll let you explain a bit more about. Dan, we met through Michelle, who is our practice growth lead and also obviously a good friend of yours. And maybe we can start there. You know, how did you get to know Michelle? How did we get introduced? And why have we started working together with Hive?
Yeah, that's a really good place to start. So Michelle and the practice she worked at previously is a really good example of what Hive do. So she's married to a chap called Declan. He's got a brother called Stephen, and they had a practice called the Smile Centre in Rayleigh. They were clients of our accountancy firm. They probably joined us about 6 years ago. Probably 7 years ago, actually. And then about 2 years in, they said, the business is going great, but what else can we do? So we went in, myself, Ross, and the marketing director, Luke, and did a diagnostic, which is where we analysed the business from a commercial, marketing, operations and leadership perspective, and then worked with the guys to understand what they wanted to achieve. So we were doing it in their kitchen. Michelle was actually kind of in the kitchen listening in. And when we left, she basically said, I can do everything they said for you. And she did. She went away, became their business manager, and implemented a lot of the things that we've been discussing on the day. And then about 1 year into the journey, Michelle called us and said, can you engage more formally? Can we have some more consultancy? So then for the next few years, I'd go up first Tuesday of every month and kind of spend the day with them. And we took the value of that business from, I think it was 1.8 when we first met, to an exit of 6.5 million over 3 years. So it was a fairly significant growth plan. They pulled on all the different services of Hive. So we've got a full service marketing agency, an accountancy firm, a projects team, which is for mergers, acquisitions, tech strategy, and myself and Ross head up the management consultancy division. So basically had a really good relationship with Declan, Stephen and Michelle. And then Michelle said, I'm working for this really cool company. What do you know about aligners? I said, absolutely nothing. I do the business stuff. But she said, you should really speak to us guys and learn a bit more. So the first thing I think I did is spoke to a few clients and said, can you check out 32Co essentially? You know, how does it work? I don't understand it. Does it add any commercial benefit to customers so I can kind of share it with the Hive network? The answer was yes. So yeah, it kind of went from there. Saw you at the, met you properly at the, was it in London? Yeah, it was London Dental Show. Then went for a nice meal afterwards. So yeah, from there it's been good. We've been referring clients to you. We've had some really great people you've sent over who are kind of interested in the business part of it as well as the clinical. So yeah, that's it, I think.
Awesome. And I think there are so many synergies with what you're doing, with what we're doing. I mean, we're all in the business of supporting dentists. That's the core mission and vision for us. But we do it in quite different ways. So I think when we first met, you said it's quite hard to describe what Hive do in a sentence because you do a lot. So how did you get into this business and why?
So it is difficult to describe. We try and say we improve financial performance for dentists, so very broad, but broadly, everything we do is about improving the commercial outcomes for our client base, be it tax or growth or whatever it might be. But our kind of genesis is quite a weird story. So about 10 years ago, I was a personal trainer in London. I went down to visit my parents in Cornwall. I met a guy who had an accountancy firm who was thinking of having a marketing agency off the side for his client base. And then I joined kind of in a sales manager style of role. So being a personal trainer in London doesn't really stack up unless you're really good, and I certainly wasn't. So I kind of took on this role, really enjoyed it. Luke came on board. So Ross was one of the partners of the accountancy firm. And we basically started developing this offering at the time for dentists, chiropractors, and local small businesses. Looking back on it, I can't really believe the amount of freedom we had to trial and test what it is we could do. But it was a really exciting time. Unfortunately, but probably naturally, it only lasted 18 months, and there was a kind of board level split up of the business. And there was a group of people, which was the senior management team, that basically just wanted to focus on dentistry, and 8 years ago we left and started Hive. And yeah, our objective was to be the best advisory firm in dentistry. We found a lot of the advice in the industry came from generally like one advisor. And we thought that how can you give advice when you've got one level of expertise and experience? You need a diversity of opinions, insights, trainings, all of that different things to actually deliver better results for the clients. We didn't know how to do it immediately. It was very much a good idea, a clear vision. Our execution probably took us 2 or 3 years to understand how best to work it. I'm very, very confident we're at a point now where any dentist joining us will immediately get benefits from joining Hive. But yeah, dentistry has changed a lot during the process. When I first started, it was very easy to get growth. It's now much tighter. So yeah, that's kind of why we focused on dentistry. We do like dentists as well. A lot of my good friends are dentists, yeah, it's kind of gone from there, and it's an exciting time to have joined and then be in it because it's changed so much through the period.
I bet it has. I mean, one of the things that we hear a lot, because we work with practice owners, big groups, individual dentists who've just left dental school and then everything between. One of the things that is clear is that they feel that these are not things that are taught at dental school. And you either learn on the fly, maybe you have a mentor, maybe you have someone in the family who's done it before, but there's big gaps in how to run a business in dentistry. Yeah. There's the clinical side, but then there's the business side. So which of those things do you think are most important for dentists? Or what do you think they want to learn most about?
Well, if I take the first question first, I guess, the most important thing is deciding what you want to be. So if you want to be a dentist, you should learn about finance, you should learn about wealth, but you don't need to concern yourself too much about the business aspects of it. I'd become the best possible dentist you can, and that's not just clinically. So I recommend you go on all different courses. I don't know what they actually achieve. I just in terms of what they're specifically for, but you should educate yourself. But equally, you should be going on different forms of communication training. I'd try all of it, kind of anything to make you a better dentist. If you want to be a dentist. Now, if you want to be a business owner, there's kind of more learning you need to do, but it's very, very different to all of your experience up until that point. So, you know, what qualifies you to be a dentist is being incredibly industrious, incredibly orderly, very intelligent, and there's kind of a, if you achieve this, then you will get that binary input-output type outcome. That's the opposite of business. You should be industrious, you should be orderly, neither of which I am actually, but you should aim to kind of be at least disciplined and organised. But you have to deal with the fact that there is no input-output, and actually what you're doing today may only manifest itself as value kind of 10 years in the future, 5 years in the future, which is really, really difficult when you spend, you know, most of your working time actually doing something that should have an almost immediate success rate. So I'd say you should only go towards the business of dentistry. I'd kind of remove dentistry from that, is if you want to be a business person. Yeah. It's a completely different thing. And it's probably, first of all, a mindset shift as opposed to a learning thing. And then genuinely, when you've got your own business, you should take inspiration from literally anywhere. I think there's kind of no waste if you're a good kind of entrepreneurial person. Any experience you have, you go, okay, I can see how I can integrate that into my business.
Yeah. So when do you think someone is ready to go and buy a practice? So we hear dentists say, look, I think I'm at a stage now in my career where I've kind of nailed, you know, dentistry. I'm comfortable with my hands, and I've enjoyed general dentistry. I've specialised in a certain area, but now I really think I should but go and buy a practice of my own. I guess the first question is, when would you advise that someone's ready to do that? And what do you think are the sort of tick boxes that they have to have gone through to say, yeah, this is going to be a successful endeavour?
So I wouldn't do it if you're doing it for a promotion. So it's not the next step. It's not the kind of thing to say, right now I've got my business, which I think it did used to be. So you'd go to trade show, you'd see your mates, and they say, have you got a practice yet? Yes, no, whatever. And it was there was some kind of status with it. Now I'd really not recommend that. I would genuinely only look at doing a business if you have a serious interest in it, The asset upside is significant with having a business. The income downside is also significant. So to bust any myths, you will be earning less for a long period of time if you buy a dental practice. It is just going to happen. You will be working significantly more. Associates have an amazing deal, like a really, really amazing deal. If you think of any other industry, you generally get paid 30% of what you produce. Law, accountancy, all kind of professional services work on that metric. But you imagine as an associate dentist on 45%, say, you're getting 45% of the revenue that comes into that business before anyone else gets paid. So I can tell you dental practices aren't particularly profitable at all. So you are giving away almost the golden goose of a job for a chance to make some wealth in the future. If you learn a load of extra stuff, if you take a load of risks, if you make a load of mistakes and learn from them, then maybe you'll have an asset worth loads more in the future. So if any of that excites you, so I'm not trying to do it as a doom and gloom thing, because I like that. I much prefer the enjoyment of running a business rather than a really well-paid job. But it is worth knowing that being an associate's an amazing job. And actually, it's probably the first time in the past 6 months where associates who are thinking of purchasing and maybe quite far down the line seem to be doing the maths a bit more rigorously and going, hang on a second. So I might be earning 30 grand a year. I'm earning 150 at the moment. You go, yeah. And they go, okay, should I do this? And it's like, it's up to you. If you really want to commit at least 5 years of your time and your whole life to this kind of mission, then yeah, dental practice ownership is something you should do. But it's difficult to give a tick list. One of the services that Hive does is something called the discovery process. So this started 5 years ago. So a chap called Johnny Cochran, I don't think he'll mind me mentioning him, he's got Bristol Dental Practice, but he knew he was buying that practice a year before he bought it. So he came to us, and we didn't work consultancy-wise with associates at the time. And he said, right, guys, I'm buying this practice. What do I do? We said, well, you're an associate. You don't have a business yet. And he said, no, I kind of want to be treated as if I've got a business. So we said, right, how do we beyond just doing the forecast so he can get lending, what do we do? So he came on our leadership course. We went through kind of a really, really rigorous program. And he bought that business and kind of tripled its value in like the first 18 months because the difference there was he literally executed everything that we'd agreed. There was the plan is simple, the tactics are simple, the deployment's difficult, but he bust ahead and did it. But it made us think, because are we underservicing our clients who are thinking of buying a practice because we don't have anything where we literally just say, have you got a deposit? Can you buy a practice rather than should you buy a practice? So we developed the discovery program, which is basically where we try and freak them out a bit and show them how little money a dental practice makes. So a lot of associates think that they get paid 45% and the principal gets paid 55%. And dentists are super intelligent people, but I think it just doesn't occur that there's actually a whole load of costs that need to be covered. So the average true profitability of a dental practice in the UK is like 5%. It might cover your debt repayment to the bank if you're lucky. So it's not. So it's kind of trying to bust that myth, show them a bit about what it's like. We do a bit of psychometric testing, which is more kind of just useful as a jumping off point to see how they view themselves, because I don't think people appreciate that actually businesses are just a bunch of people, and a bunch of people that, some people might be interested in being there, some people might not be, and it doesn't matter. As the leader, you've got to figure out how you can kind of make the best of the situation, move the business forward. And yeah, people are really difficult. They're not. They're nice. I don't dislike people, but it is the hardest thing in any business that you've got. You've got to, steward a disparate group towards a vision that they might not necessarily know exists and might not necessarily want to move towards.
Fascinating, and I think what you said about there being an expectations that to be a successful dentist, obviously you should own some practices, and that's kind of what everyone does, and having the reality put in front of you, if you've got a decent income and you can go wherever you want. You're flexible if you're a good dentist. Lots of people will hire you. So are you really willing to trade that for a kind of shot at the jackpot? And for some people, that's exciting, like you say, but being realistic about that and being realistic about the cost of it, and that's emotional, that's financial, of managing a group of people who are now dependent on you, a business that's dependent on you to grow, right? It doesn't just happen by magic. You have to inject something into it to make it do better.
Yeah, that's probably something worth pointing out, that any business you buy, because of how debt works, you will have to grow to ever make any money. So I can take you through a lot of kind of detailed information as to why that's the case, and that's actually a big part of the discovery. But you will not be making any money when you buy a practice. Yeah, it's because of how they're valued and how the debt works. So that means, okay, you've got to find an extra 50 grand a year to market. And is there a sales process in place? No. So we've got to either develop someone to do that role, we've got to recruit someone. How much are the current associates grossing? We've got to work with the associates to lift their gross up as well. So there's loads. Yeah, the strategy is broadly straightforward when you've got a single site. You know, there is some nuance given different areas, demographics, that type of thing. But the execution and application is just really difficult, and it's so different to dentistry. That's part of the problem. I often say, you know, I don't know what it is in dentistry, but I hope my dentist, I had a crown the other day, and I hope he thought that there was something like a 99% success rate of having that, of doing that dental work. Well, in business, if you can get a 70% success rate or a 65% success rate, that you appraise yourself, if the chances of this working, you'd take that. Because you have to take it, you have to push forward, you have to learn from it, and then you have to try again with some kind of added nuance to it. So it's a really difficult thing for people to get their head round and actually push forward with. One thing I probably should say is a lot of really good dentists are trapped in associate roles that aren't delivering them the goods. So I think this is a really big place where education is lacking in UK dentistry. 'Cause dentistry, I know that the only way you rate your position, a practice, is what percentage they'll pay you, and it's literally entirely the wrong metric to be looking at it for. So you should be appraising a practice on how much they're investing in marketing, what sales process they had, what the other associates are already grossing, so what their average daily yield is, what their ADY. And then a lot of associates have said to me over the years, well, where are these practices? Which, again, is a fair comment. I can promise you they're out there. So if you're an associate watching this who wants to find one of these practices, I've got a whole load of them that are desperate to find associates who are basically up for collaboration, because it won't work straight away. Every practice is different. Every kind of brand position is slightly different. And you've got to figure out how you fit in that system and make it better. It's quite interesting, actually. Michelle had an associate who came for a discovery day, and he joined Essex Smile Centre, as it's now called, and I think he was grossing about £1,000 a day. I don't think he works there anymore because he's since bought his own practice, but I think by the time he left, he was grossing £3,000 a day. And he said to me, when I first joined there, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why they were forcing me to do all this stuff, and what's a TCO and what's an ADY. I'm a good dentist. Let me do my dentistry. And that was it. You know, it's fair enough. But he said it actually took him longer than you'd expect. But it took him 18 months. And he said, I get it now, because he saw his pay slip at the end of the month, and it's 3 times more than he'd been getting before. So all of the extra stuff, if you engage with that as an associate, the rewards are massive. And I think I assume you'd be happier in that job. You know, kind of saying that people don't necessarily be interested in their job. But I think most people do want to do a good job and do want to be part of something. So, the way to do that is, you know, pick your principal's brain. And if your principal isn't interested, find another practice.
Completely.
That's it.
Yeah. So this is something that we hear a lot. Obviously, a lot of what we do is training and upskilling dentists in providing high-value private treatments like clear aligners, and we get people to the point where they're really confident. We've trained them, really comprehensively, and they're raring to go. And then they look around, they're like, I'm not in a practice that supports this type of work. They're not looking to support me with marketing. There's no infrastructure in place to help me kind of manage and nurture my patients so that they actually want to come and buy. So my newfound talents in let's say clear aligner treatment are kind of going to waste. What shall I do? And there's kind of two things that they can do. One is, like you say, go to your principal and say, look, I really want to do this. Can you help me think about how we could grow this? Or to say, look, I don't think this is the right place for me. I'm going to take this elsewhere. And it's a tough decision. So yeah, I think if you can help even show that as an option or as two different things that they should be thinking about, I think that will help a lot of people.
Yeah, and as a principal, it's kind of a funny thing when I start working with someone, because there's, I think Jocko Willink says, there's no bad teams, just bad leaders. So every business, to quite a significant degree, is a reflection of their leader, the person responsible for it, and they may be absent and the team may be disengaged, or they may be kind of angry dentists who throw stuff around and the team will probably be spiky, or they may be just nice people and the business goes on. But until that principal gets really deliberate when they're approaching something, and they'll, if they're kind of moaning about an associate, and I say, yeah, but what have you done? We agreed you were going to spend time with her. Have you spent that time with her? And they'll go, well, no, because actually I just didn't think it was important. I'll say, okay, so we haven't actually tried anything at this point. So how can we appraise the situation? It's not fair. So as a principal, you've got to be thinking, how are you going to give this person the best chance of success? So to one extreme, I've got a client who, once an associate's bedded in and they show they've got the right personality and blend with the team well, he'll send them on the Dawson course, which is really expensive. He'll send them on all the different communication training courses, seriously invest in his dentist. And, occasionally they do go as well. But on the whole, they stick around and become really good core team members. And that works out for him. You don't necessarily have to go to that level, but you have to think about it. Be really charitable with the team and really harsh on yourself about how you're creating a space where people can develop. I'm mega guilty of this. So in the early days of Hive, I was like, well, you can progress however you like. You can. There was too much space because of my personality. I don't like rules is probably what I'd have. So there was very little structure, which was really good for a small group of people to design their own role and kind of develop their own departments. It's not good for the vast majority of people. So I've had to learn to try and be more orderly, have more boundaries, not just say, oh, you should read more books, but say, and here's your Audible account. If you want to buy a book, this is who you email, and you can have any book, all of that stuff. So it's not, they don't have to do all the work to get there, if that makes sense. Yeah. Whereas before it was like, you can do whatever you like, but you have to do it from the ground up. Whereas now, hopefully, there's a ladder.
Go be better.
Yeah.
I'd love to. Yeah, I think. So the practice owner, the practice manager, they have a responsibility to help make their practice a really great place to work and to nurture their dentist, because they can leave if they want. But then similarly, like you say, the dentist has a responsibility to then engage with that and not just turn up 9 to 5, clock in, clock out, and then expect cash to land in their lap. So it's a relationship between both.
Yeah, I think it comes back to the idea of a locus of control, internal versus external. So last time I did a workshop on this at Hive, someone actually took their locus of control and handed in their notice. So I'm always careful when I obviously want people to follow their own path. So it was the right thing. But every time, this is wherever you are in your career, you're finding yourself blaming other people or talking about what you're not getting. First of all, just try and flip it back to you. So the idea of a locus of control is either life happens to you, so an external locus of control, or an internal one, which is I affect the outcomes in life. You may not always get it right, but the classic example I give is someone being late, rocking up to a job interview, and they go, sorry, the bus was late. Whereas the person, that's an external locus of control, whereas someone with an internal locus of control would say, I'm going to get there an hour early. I'm not going to go to the interview an hour early because that's weird and they won't like me, but I'm going to hang around nearby so I know absolutely I can get there 10 minutes early which is an appropriate time to be early, and they'll go, that person's organised.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as a dentist, sometimes, some principals aren't doing a good job for the associate. So when you've tried everything, be looking for other jobs. And as a principal, sometimes associates aren't right for your practice as well. So, once you know, and you probably should part ways, is my opinion.
And also the acceptance that you have to invest up front. So it's obviously a philosophy that we adopt. We spent a ton on free education, free training, lots of nurturing, to the point where people are, I'm not really sure why you're still giving us so much free stuff. And it's because we're investing in you, and that eventually will bear fruit. And it will be the same for a practice owner who's bringing in, especially a new associate. They're not going to be earning you top dollar straight away, and that's not what that's not what they're there for. But if you can coach them, and if you can provide an environment where they can learn from you, they will not leave, and they'll be very happy to grow with you and with your business.
Anyone starting any new job will be a loss for that company. Yeah. It's just a fact. There's no way you can walk into a job and be perfect for it straight away. And an interesting thing happens, because one of the things we often advocate for is recruiting a business manager. So it's slightly different to a practice manager, which is more administering the production of the dental practice. It's a horrible word, but I have to use it because it describes it. Entrepreneur. It's kind of a proxy for what the principal should be doing, but often the principal's too busy to actually be doing it on such a frontline level. But someone who's going to try new things and kind of tear stuff up and challenge stuff, and work with the marketing agency and really grow the business. So that role might be 50 grand, say. There's massive scale depending on the size of the practice or group or whatever. And that's often the biggest salary that a principal's ever paid. And, one thing we kind of say is, look, it's never going to be 50 grand unless it doesn't work, because I guarantee you'll get rid of that person in probation if it's not working out. So, and that's true. And it is your responsibility they're not going to be doing the job perfectly, but you're trying to figure out what their mindset is, how committed they are. When do they reply to emails? Do they kind of put out of offices on? Because it's all little cues you're trying to get to see how engaged they are. Because actually, as a business manager, you should almost be behaving as if it's your business. Yeah. So they get judged pretty harshly. But personally, you might have 3 people on 20 grand in the business who you don't know if they're doing a good job or not. Well, that's actually a 60 grand hole. So it's often those roles where I'd rather pay the good person of those 3 30 grand and not have the other 2. But again, you can only do this if you're engaged. So hopefully your business manager will help you with that. But as a principal, you do have to think about these things. Like when we're looking at the proportion of wages to revenue, it's not because you're paying people too much. It's never that. It's an effectiveness issue. That's always the case. Most businesses I know want to pay their team more. But when you've got people that aren't performing and you don't know where they are, or you're not taking ownership over sorting it out, that's what kind of drags the whole pack back.
And it's very demotivating for the good people if they see not good people hanging around and being rewarded in the same way. So how do you think about incentives? So obviously as an owner, you are totally incentivized to grow that business, and you want everybody in the organization to feel the same way.
Yeah.
So for us as a business, and for you as a business, obviously, targets and objectives, and there are different frameworks for kind of goal setting. How do you suggest generally, or what's an easy way to get started setting objectives and incentives for the team?
That's quite a difficult question. There's a great thing happening in nursing at the moment. So obviously a lot of principals are going, nurses are scarce and more expensive. Well, it's a really hard job and they probably should have been paid more, but because of the market average, people were switching jobs to worse jobs for 50p an hour more, which isn't right. There's something going wrong there. And the best practices with their best nurses all got paid really well previously anyway. But the problem was, how do you qualify between what would have been a £10 an hour nurse and someone who's doing £15 an hour? It actually requires relationships and development to actually get there. So with the nursing teams, what I'm seeing at the moment, there has been a jump, which is great. But don't leave it at that, and don't just say it's because the industry has gone up. I think it's hard to incentivize specifically for nurses because almost every minute of their job is really important for them to get it right. So I'd say pay really well, but spend time with them to relay to them what they're doing well as well. And then I would generally, what I recommend to my clients is ring fence some of your profit, and basically decide how to break it up, because
it's bonuses
as bonuses. Yeah. So I'm quite happy for the board of directors, as long as there's like advocates for everyone to actually go through each person and discuss who deserves what, because it's really, really hard if you pin it on an arbitrary metric like, was the nurse in on time? Well, you might actually be missing the point with another nurse who's actually stayed really late and tidied down someone else's surgery as well. So it's this kind of dialogue that works. And I don't think you should bonus people for doing their job. It's only when people go above and beyond. So yeah, nurses are difficult to give a specific metric to. For TCOs, again, it depends on the practice. But for example, I know Michelle basically says if you reactivate a short-term ortho lead, and it's not like gone straight through the process, and you kind of bring it to me and show that you reactivated it, she'll pay you £50 for that. Also TCOs, like everyone's included in the ring fence bonus as well. But I've seen some shocking TCO remuneration, which is just too much. So you basically create all this growth, and then you're giving any chance of profit to one person who's obviously really happy. But then when we do the numbers, you're going to demotivate that person. So do be careful with it. Always be clear that any kind of bonus is discretionary as well, because you can't guarantee you're going to be profitable next year as well. Business managers might have a quarterly bonus, often tied to revenue. If you're building towards a sale, it might be tied to profit. But unfortunately, there isn't like a formula as such, but you should be paying attention to it. You should be always thinking about, is this person revved up to work for me? One thing which I only realised the other day, which is surprising considering I've got an accountancy business, but basically you can buy anyone in your team kind of anything for under £50 and it'd be a non-taxable thing. And I thought you could only do it on someone's birthday or like once a year basically, but you can do it kind of as long as it's not standardised, you can do it whenever you like. So that's great.
Like small gifts and it means rewards,
and it kind of does mean a lot, particularly if it's something that you might not buy yourself or something like that. It has a really big impact because you've thought. That's the big thing, that you've actually thought about the person. I'm not saying do that and don't pay people more. You should pay people more, but for doing a good job as well. But yeah, it's the attention and focus that people do want and do respond really well to, and do be clear that it's not part of their remuneration package as well, so they don't just see, every few months I get a gift from Sonia.
Standardised,
that's great,
and it's probably not just the practice owners or the manager's responsibility. You can engage in this stuff even as a young dentist. You can be thinking about these things. Because 100%. It will make a massive difference to your earnings as well if you can motivate the rest 100%. Of the team.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I don't know why associates don't do it more. Mm-hmm. I would want the TCO to be my best friend. I would want all the nurses to be my best friend. I want reception to be my best friend, because you will do better. They're the people who pull the strings of the business. They decide which patients you get when. So if they don't like you, unfortunately, you're probably going to get worse patients. So I shouldn't say it, but like cash in hand is something that I know some associates do, not for specific stuff. They just say, thank you for a great week. Here's 50 quid. Yeah, have your first round on me or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think you can write that down as a taxable thing.
But something nice that shows that you thought of them, and it doesn't have to be anything huge. It's just, it's back to your point around people jumping, to a different job because they're being paid 25p an hour more, or because they're being paid 48% rather than 47%. It doesn't make sense.
There's a good thing I heard, I can't think of his name, but the CEO of Netflix has something called the Keeper's Test. So basically, if someone comes in, hands their notice to you, what would you do to keep them?
Yeah.
And if you wouldn't do anything, why are they still working for you?
Yeah.
And if you would do something, why aren't you working towards that now?
Yeah.
So it's kind of putting the pressure on you, of the owner, to make sure that everyone who's employed by your business is moving in the right direction, but also rewarded fairly. So even if you're not, so I'll always welcome anyone questioning their salary, or it's not a weird thing at Hive, because I should know exactly why their salary is their salary.
Yeah.
And if I don't know, I'm a failure as a leader. Basically, you need to know exactly why someone's on that level. So when they go, but so-and-so's been raised to this or whatever, you should be able to describe to them very clearly, well, actually, I wanted you to progress into this area, and once we've established that, then we can review salary. But at the moment, this is right for where we are. Yeah. And be prepared for them to say, well, that's not right, and walk. So you have to stand by your decision. Yeah.
So, Dan, I just want to say thank you for an absolutely fascinating, hour or so of discussion that we've just had about everything really that a dentist who's just starting out to someone who is perhaps building a business or has already built a business should be thinking about. So thank you for coming in. It was lovely to see you.
Thanks, Sonia. It's been great.
That's it, guys, for another episode of The Modern Dentist. Check us out on Instagram and Facebook for the next episodes and past episodes that you may have missed. Look forward to seeing you next time.